Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is this right here. So if that looks interesting to you guys, please carry on and watch the video. And also one more thing before we get into the video, if you enjoy what I do here, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. It really helps me out and lets me know you enjoy the video. But with all that out of the way, let's get into that video. Okay, so to start off painting our Scanlan Shorthalt miniature here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with his skin, and to start off I'm going to be using some tan flesh for this. Since he has a bit of a darker skin tone, tan flesh is going to be a great base tone layer here. And what I'm going to do, of course, just paint everywhere where the skin naturally is, giving it good, nice, thin coats overall, building up those layers. So I think I ended up by using 2 layers here, so nice and easy. And of course, don't forget his nice prominent chest that he's showing out between his shirt there as well. Okay, so now we have a base skin color down with that tan flesh. What we're going to do now is come in with some highlights. And we're using barbarian flesh for this. And to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for the places where the sun would naturally hit. So that's areas like the bridge of the nose, the cheeks, the eyebrows, and of course hitting things like the little fingers, his chest, his pecs that he's showing through his shirt there, just places like that where the sun has sort of naturally hit. So all those upper parts, because I'm aiming for sort of like the sun's overhead right on top of him, so nice and easy to pick out those highlighted areas. Then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with a wash, and I'm using flesh wash for this, and this is giving it a good overall wash. Now, since Scanlan has a little bit of a darker skin tone, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a layer of wash, wait for it to dry, and then I'm going to do a second layer over top of that, just to darken the skin up just that little bit extra. So, of course, waiting for it to completely dry, which can, on the safe side, I would say probably leave it a couple of hours just to make sure it's completely dried up before you apply the next layer of wash, of course, if you're going for that. So just giving everywhere a nice overall wash, and of course remember to avoid those pooling places as well. Okay, so now we have that completed. What I'm going to do now is come in with some rigid leather, and our rigid leather I'm going to use to paint his boots up. So nice good overall coverage of the boots. Also one little thing I forgot to mention as well, that while I was waiting for that wash to completely dry between the steps, I also painted in his teeth. He's got this big smile on him. I painted in his teeth there too. I just used a little bit of off-white just to with a very thin brush, and just carefully picked out his teeth, so he's got that big shining smile, as you can see sculpted in there. But of course, totally up to you if you want to do that. They stick out, they're quite delicate work, so good way to practice your brush control on there as well. But of course, we're just painting up those boots at the moment. So now with his boots painted up, what I'm going to do now is we're going to come in with some ivory. And for this, I'm going to be using this for his undershirt. So he's got sort of like a purple vest on depicted in his artwork and in his miniature here, so I want to do that too. As well as that, I'm also painting in the little bits in between his puffy pants there. He's got sort of like a diamond pattern on the inside of them. I'm painting them up ivory as well, because when I come to paint them in, I'm going to be doing them in a different color. I'm actually going to paint them in, and it's going to be a little bit easier if I paint them in the white, so I get the more vibrant color I'm after. Totally up to you if you want to do that though. But as you can see, we're just painting in his undershirt, which comes out into the sleeves there, so nice and easy to pick those out. Then once we have that complete, what we're going to do now is we're going to come in with some deep blue. And our deep blue we're going to be using for his pants, so giving his pants a good overall coating with our deep blue. And since we've got that zenithal highlight there, and this deep blue is sort of a thinnish color, we're going to get a little bit of that zenithal showing through as well, which is great because that's exactly what I want to do here. So another way you could do this, if you don't have a light thin paint like this here, you could also use contrast paint to do that, and you would get the same sort of effect. So just going through and being careful, picking out those areas of the pants, especially where it leads into that puffy area. Then once we have that complete, what we're going to do is come in with some orc blood, and this here is the closest color I have in my painting supplies that shows to the official color of Scanlan's purple clothing. So the only problem with that is that this paint is very, very thin and has very poor coverage, which is exactly why I painted in the bottom of the pants there, as you can see, with a white color, because with it having all those deep shadowed areas, it was going to take layers upon layers to build up that color to what I wanted it. Not so bad with the shirt itself, the vest, but with the pants it was going to be a real problem since it was a lot darker there. So just remember that if you're using the exact colours on here. If not, you probably got to paint with a better coverage than this orc blood here. Very sort of poor coverage, unfortunately. Great colour, but it's just unfortunately a poor coverage paint. So, and of course we want to pick out his nice beret that he has on him as well. Okay, so now that we have all his purple area painted up, I'm going to come in now with some NATO brown. Slightly different colour from the rigid brown here. You could totally use the same colour if you wanted to. I wanted to make it separated out a bit differently from the actual boots himself. So I'm going to be painting in his hair for this. Now, I'm unfortunately sorry that they're a little bit out of focus here, as this miniature is very, very small. And keeping it in focus is a bit of a problem. Moving it a centimetre back and forth from the camera, even with it on autofocusing, it really does unfortunately blur out the focus. So sorry about that, but what I'm doing is I'm just painting in Scanlan's hair, which he has a nice big ponytail at the back as well. Okay, so now we have his hair all painted up. What we're going to do now is we're going to come in with some black grey. I'm going to be using this to paint up the belts on Scanlan here. So he's got a nice belt across his area where of course you'd have the belt, of course, and as well as that he also has a couple of straps on his back where he's holding up his loot and his sword. As well as that too, I'm also going to be painting up the sword scabbard as well in the same colour. So a few areas there to paint up. Switch to a smaller brush if you need to, and again, I'm sorry this miniature is so small and it's very easy to get out of focus. I'm trying my best here, but it's just so hard with these really tiny miniatures. But hopefully you can get the idea of what we're going to be painting up. It's just everywhere where the straps are, and as well as that also the sword scabbard. Then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come with some orange brown. Now orange brown is a great colour to work in with blues and purples, or orange in general I should say, since they're good contrasting colours off one another. So I thought that would be great to do in with the part of the miniature here, and what a great easy place to do it then on his loot here that he has on his back. So giving that a nice paint, and you can see it works in nicely, just having that slight tint of orange in the brown to work off the blues and the purples there. So that's why I thought it'd be a great colour. It could be a good colour choice for you whenever you're painting up something in blues and purples. Then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with a metallic, and I'm going to be using gold for Scanlan here. Glorious Scanlan with his gold. So I'm going to be painting up his belt buckle there. As well as that, I'm also going to be painting up his handle of his sword there. As well as that too, I'm also going to paint up his flute that he's got here. I'm going to have him a fancy shining gold flute that he's got there in his hand. I thought that would be a cool little decision to do. They're totally up to you if you want to do that there. I just want him to have these glorious gold pieces on him, and I thought what better than a nice golden sort of flute. Then once we have that complete, we have all our base coats done. So what we're going to do now is going to come in with some washes. So first up, I'm going to be using nuln oil here. Now I'm going to be applying this to basically the areas of the clothing. So any of the purple and blue areas. So I'm going to be avoiding any brown areas and any gold areas. I'm going to be saving for a different colored wash here. But I'm going to go over things like the belts, his pants, and his clothing, and even his white undershirt as well. I want to paint that up with the wash to give it some nice shadows in there, because we're going to come back with some highlights a little bit later on to paint in and really bring those up. So coming in with a wash overall may seem a little bit scary, but you want to get those nice shadows that we can paint in later on, give us some good effects in that time. But of course, as always with a wash, make sure you're waiting for it to completely dry and or avoid pooling. Then once we have that completely dried, what we're going to do now is come in with our second wash, and this is going to be agrax earthshade. And for this one, we're going to be applying over the brown areas. So this is of course areas like the boots and the loot on his back essentially. Same thing, we want to wait for it to completely dry before we move on to the next step, and we want to try and avoid the pooling. As well as that too, I forgot to mention, he also has brown hair, so I'm going to give that a brown wash as well. Nice and simple again. And with his loot, being careful to avoid the pulling, because it actually has sculpted into this miniature some nice strings along that loot, so I want to try and emphasize that without too much effort, and by letting the wash go into the areas between those strings, it's going to help bring out the strings on that loot more prominently. So it's just a nice feature to add in there with the wash too, so being careful to avoid the pulling, especially on areas like that. We got nice small crevices. Then once we have that completely dry, what we're going to do is come in with our last wash, and for our last wash we're going to be using reikland fleshshade. This is more of a reddish type of wash, a reddish flesh tone wash, and I'll tell you what, it comes out really good when you're placing over golds. It really does give it like a warm goldy look, so that's why I love doing this over gold. I like the warm tones it introduces into the wash. So like I said, we want to be applying this over all of our gold areas. It gives us this nice warm gold look, and then we want to wait for it to completely dry before moving on to the next step. Then now we have that completely dry, what we're going to do now is we're going to come in with some of that off-white color we had before. So in my case it's ivory, but up to you depending on what you use, and we want to be placing it on our highlights here. So this is everywhere, the upper areas or anywhere that isn't sort of like in between a crease, because like we placed our wash in here before to get into all those recessed areas. So basically what we want to do is come back in and paint over those areas, but avoiding those recesses, so we've got that wash nicely into those recessed areas and our nice highlights, and bringing it back up to a white shirt. And then coming back in with our browns again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with our browns and just adding on little spots of highlights, basically just placing them in the upper areas where that sun would naturally hit to give a great highlighted look. So we've got some areas of shadows and some areas of highlights just to add in that little bit extra effect. Nice and easy step here to do on our boots. Then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do now is come in back with our orc blood, and this time I've just added just a little bit of that ivory into it to lighten it up a little bit. Also, we're going to do the exact same thing, aim for those highlighted spots, areas that would naturally be hit by the sun and the light, and we're just coming through and picking them out. And again, like I said before, it's really hard with this miniature being so small. I'm trying to keep it in focus as good as I can, but it's super difficult with Scanlan being a gnome and such a small miniature. I'm trying my best here, but just like I said again, aiming for those areas that are naturally in the sunlight and picking them out with our colors to really emphasize the highlights on our miniature. And with that complete, we are on to our last highlight now, and we'll be using bright gold to do this. And this of course for the gold areas, as the name implies, and we want to be aiming for those high points in the areas that would naturally be in that sunlight. And we want to give his glorious flute that he's holding up in the air some nice shining brightly in the sun. As well as that too, I also want to be picking out the other gold areas as well, like his belt buckle. But with all that completed now, we have finally finished painting up Scanlan. So let's go to those glamour shots and see how Scanlan came out in the end. And with all that completed, we have finally finished painting up Scanlan Shorthalt from the Critical Role Miniatures line. So I hope this video has been helpful for you guys, whether you want to follow along with what I did here, or you just want to use this video as some inspiration in painting up your own miniatures. But with all that said guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video.